The presence of spring water on the seafloor has been a well-known fact since antique time. Pausania, in the 2nd century, cited cases of underwater springs not only in Greece but also in Italy, in the land of the Etruscans, where spring water boiled in the sea. In modern times, the phenomenon has been generally neglected by the scientific world. Although spring water is of extreme importance in those arid coastal regions, above all, where industry and agricultural development have determined an ever-growing necessity for fresh water, enough to consume the superficial water supply and render precarious the underground one. Important evidences of undersea spring water along coastal areas with limestone aquifers and dolomite fissures have been documented in the world. Here, superficial flow is generally scarce, so that the waters that feed the springs are for the most part conveyed underground through a system of fractures and karst conducts which feed aquifers throwing into the sea. At times, the aquifer is under pressure, in that often it is covered by recent and primarily impermeable geological formations. Therefore, the emerging of an undersea aquifer takes place where overburden presents ducts of tectonic origin or progressive erosion which enable direct communication between the aquifer and the sea. Research or exploitation of such emergence which respect the natural equilibrium of the ecosystem are today of considerable interest in a region like Puglia, which is invaded for 2/3 of its surface by a potent karst aquifer in the Cretaceous carbonate rocks, site of an extremely deep groundwater reservoir. Puglia, for the greatest part, is poor in superficial water resources, and the principal sources of its supply are located outside of its region and represented by the Caposele spring in Irpinia, from which water is advied by means of a 250-kilometer aqueduct built in 1906, as well as by dams situated on some rivers in Basilicata, its neighbor region. Within this context, particular attention is given to the undersea spring called Galeso, situated in Mar Piccolo of Taranto, in southern Italy, that, with a flow rate of about 800 liters per second and a salt content around 3 grams per liter, represents one of the more conspicuous manifestations of spring water sources in the region. The geological section, which passes through the Galeso, shows the stratigraphic sequence in the area of the spring. A geophysical structural survey was conducted over the entire undersea surface of the Mar Piccolo by the Unibum system, with the scope of acquiring data relative to the thickness and attitude of the formations. With the intention of studying the spring's regime and the design of an optimal and definite groundwater capture system, an experimental control and measure system was carried out on the spring with the aim of studying and monitoring the hydraulic and physical parameters which characterize this particular spring. The task has been accomplished by circumscribing the mouth of the main water source by means of a modular structured fiberglass bell. Water gushes out through a duct on the floor of the Mar Piccolo at a depth of about 18 meters. The morphology of the spring is very complex, as it is situated at the mouth of a cavern susceptible to landslides. On 3 base modular cylinders with a 2-meter diameter, a cone-shaped passage was grafted to reduce the water loss which takes place where there are variations in diameter, as well as to predispose a device of the Venturi type to measure the freshwater flow rate. In order to avoid the disturbance of the very delicate pressure equilibrium which regulate the spring under natural conditions, the system was equipped with an additional device that we shall call bypass of communication with the seawater. The terminal part of the structure is a telescope mechanism and is consequently variable in length. This system was adopted in order to better study the modifications induced on the spring's natural conditions by tapping. Variations in the hydraulic load due to the system are controlled by the mobility of this element, which in turn influences the state of equilibrium freshwater-seawater inside the lateral bypass. A situation of correct hydraulic equilibrium of the entire system is visible in the bypass by the formation of an interface distinguished by an area of opalescence. The bypass then accomplishes the double function of safety valve for the spring and piezometer for the duct. The result must be such that the system is able to convey to the sea surface the fresh water that gushes naturally from the spring. Any artificially induced variation in flow can vary the neighboring spring's regime and cause the entrance of seawater through the side mouth. So harmful variations in the positions of the base interfaces area are produced between the freshwater aquifer and the underlying seawater. In order to better gather the data, the system has been equipped with sophisticated automatic instrumentation, where the data is under continual monitoring and registration. With the aim of studying the piezometria of the aquifer, the thermosalina stratigraphy, and the behavior of freshwater bearing formation compared to that of seawater, a spy well on dry land has been bored. Such a well has been divided into 3 isolated zones, interesting respectively the portion of freshwater of the aquifer, the transitional areas, and the seawater. These studies and measurements are aimed towards the design of a definite groundwater tap for the Galeso spring, which can be made excellent use of for agricultural as well as civil and industrial needs throughout all of the Pugliese territory, especially if blended with water containing a lower salt content.